Everybody in the room know who can and can't drive? There are two main types of people who get nailed with this particular stereotype, is there not? Because clearly everybody knows women can't drive. You understand I'm being sarcastic, yes. There's a lot of you in this room that will make you angry. And the big it's actually kind of comical because the big stereotype in Southern Ontario is Chinese people can't drive. But if you go to British Columbia, is Japanese people can't drive. It's really interesting. It's a very, very interesting thing. My first lesson in this, my first lesson in understanding the mechanism behind this, one of my good friends from way back when we were in high school, he used to pick me up. I went to university for my undergrad at York University, and I lived in Markham. So he'd pick me up fairly regularly and drive me all the way home, and that's about a 45-minute drive. It's about 15, 20 kilometers worth. And he was going on this rant one day about Chinese people not being able to drive. Chinese people can't drive. I kid you not, I couldn't have scripted this for a movie any better. We passed 3 accidents that day. First accident, 2 white folks in a car accident, didn't say a thing. Second accident, there was a black guy and a white guy, he didn't say a thing. We passed the last accident, white person, Chinese person, he says, look, there's your proof, Chinese people can't drive. His brain didn't even notice the other 2. And that's the way our brains are set up to function. We notice the differences. The things that are norm, the things that are everyday, they're kind of minutia. They come in one ear, out the other. We notice them every day, but they're so normal we don't really pay attention to them. It's those things that get marked as differences for us that we really, really hone into and pay attention to. Our brains are very, very peculiar. And they work in a very, very specific way. Now, I have a cup over there. I was drinking some coffee. I learned about that cup when I was a little boy. I started to look out of my crib, and I could see this thing. I didn't know it was a cup. I didn't know what it was for, but I would see my mother pick it up. I would see my dad pick it up, my brother, my 2 older sisters. I'd see them picking up this cup. In my little child brain, I would say, that thing can be picked up. I'd see them pouring different things in it. And as I'm getting older, I'd see all these other things happening with this cup. Different liquids poured in, picking it up, drinking it. Accidentally dropped on the floor once. I learned those can shatter. I learned all of these things about that cup. Now, there's other things that fire too. For anybody in this room who has a little baby, our daughter is 2.5 now. She's almost 3. And she's on to the big sippy cups like this that you hold like that. But when we started, she had these little tiny sippy cups, right, with the little handle. Because if we gave her the big one, she wouldn't be able to grab it. She'd just knock it over. She didn't have the tactile senses. So little by little, you train their tactile senses. And so with the cup, I learned how to hold the cup little by little. The other things, mirror neurons, firing in my brain, telling me I can see what they're doing, I can do it too. So all of those things combining, I learn about the cup. Now, the really neat thing about how I engage a cup today is when I walk into a room and I see a cup, I don't see the cup and decide how I'm going to deal with it. I see the cup and my brain gives me every option available to me in relation to that cup that I know through experience, and every option I can logically infer. And then my brain dampens down the options I'm not going to use until I'm left with the final product, what I'm going to do with the cup. Is everybody with me? Right. It's very similar to what happens when you go to work for the first time. Let's say you walk in and you meet your boss for the first time. Now, he or she is like anybody else. Everybody is a clean slate when you meet them for the first time, for the most part. If you take away all the other things that are going on in society on a regular basis, if you're just a human being, there would be this massive cups availability that you would be able to engage them with. If I walk up and say, hi, how you doing? And his response is, I don't have time for this right now, and he walks away. Tomorrow when I come to work, anybody think I'm engaging him with this many cups, or am I coming down to here? My options with which I'm going to engage him just shrunk down. There's a whole bunch of things I'm not going to think about him, a whole bunch of things I'm not going to take a chance with. If he walks up to me on day 2, she walks up to me on day 2 and says, I'm really sorry, I was in a rush. My apologies. Let's sit down and we'll talk about the job. All my options start opening up again. Does this make sense for folks? Now, what happens if next week he does the same thing again? They're likely not going to open up so much again. We don't build trust because you tell someone you can be trusted, right? We build trust by proving to people that we are trustworthy. We learn by experience. We learn by experience. And so reality is, when my friend sees accident after accident after accident after accident that does not involve Asian folks, why do you think he's only latching on to the ones that do? Because no part of his experience has learned to think of other people as bad drivers. There's no stereotypes around them. So his brain doesn't latch into those. It's a really peculiar piece of how our functionality works, our brain. So I want to wrap this in. Because the same thing happens, not just with large groups of people, but with individuals. With individuals. So you can learn to feel comfortable with individuals, or you can learn to be uncomfortable with individuals. And if individuals are connected to a massive stereotype, then your discomfort can sort of be ingrained before you even meet them. And that's part of the challenge that we have, is our workplaces, our communities are completely diversifying at such a pace that some of the old pieces, some of the old stereotypes, the fact that they're still around and still so strong, again, has very little to do with intent. It has to do with how our systems get geared to just live it and prove it and see it over and over again in spite of evidence to the contrary.